Um, I apologize. I was giving room for Nan there. Hey, welcome tonight. We are so fortunate to have with us Naomi Whittel live answering your questions, and I'm going to be moderating tonight. And so I just want to let you, the audience, know that if I look down, I'm probably answering a chat. I'm probably answering questions and just making sure that we get Naomi tonight to answer most of our questions and use the best of the time that we absolutely can. So, Naomi, thank you so much for giving us an hour out of your very, very busy day.
Oh, I'm so excited to go into some of these questions. Look, all of you that are joining, this is so much fun. And I think we'll get to a lot of the deeper questions. I've just spent the past 3 days with some world-renowned experts on fasting, on protein cycling, and on what that can really do for our health and some of the newest science. So I'm excited to share a lot of it with all of you.
Great, great, great. Naomi, first of all, you need to know that we have tons of comments coming in right now just thanking you for your book and how much people love it. So thank you for doing that, getting us a resource.
Oh, thank you so much. We're really happy to be here.
So I want to go back a little bit. First of all, we were talking about this a little bit before the broadcast that I was looking at who your core audience is, and I'm your core audience. You know, I am the middle of the bell curve. I'm an overweight woman in my 50s who's raised a ton of kids, who works, has a ton going on. And I'm so excited because this is almost like selfishly, you know, my dream. I actually get to talk to Naomi about some stuff. So it's going to be really fun. But when you and I want to take the Facebook audience back just a little bit. You and I met a few months ago. And I walked in and I said, you know, Naomi, here's going to be the problem is you don't really understand what it's like to be me, you know, what it's like to be, you appear to be this just put together, totally, you know, confident, no chinks in the armor kind of a person. And I know that's not always how life was. In fact, you told me when you were young how conscientious you were about how you looked. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So for those of you that don't know much about my background, I have suffered from autoimmune issues from before I was born. So I had many, many issues throughout my childhood, such that my body was covered in the inflammatory eczema. And I would do everything I could to make sure that people couldn't see what my skin looked like, because it truly, for any of you that have seen what eczema is, you know, it bleeds, it pusses, it's very red, it's very unattractive. And oftentimes you can't have anything touching it because it hurts so much. So for me, with that being one of the autoimmune disorders that I deal with, I would try to cover it. And as I got older and I became more confident and my mother encouraged me to be a little bit less shy and hidden, I started to express myself. And maybe, you know, like you can see I'm wearing short sleeves today. I would wear short sleeves and do different things. And it actually put me in a place where other kids in my class, the boy who I wanted to have take me to the spring dance, didn't engage with me. And so it left a very strong imprint on my mind and on me as a teenager. And so I have been committed from that time forward to really try to understand and discover as many solutions to transforming my own health. And our health is transformed from the inside out. So it doesn't matter what it is that we're putting on our body, meaning that all that does is suppress whatever is going on that may be exposed on our largest organ. It doesn't matter, other than being aware that 60% of what we do put on our body is actually absorbed into our body. So there can be a much more negative effect. We may be able to clear up something for a short period of time, but ultimately we're hurting our body on the inside, from the inside out. And so my life is dedicated to understanding where things come from, working with the greatest minds in science, and bringing these solutions, not just to myself, not just to you, Kat, but to as many women as possible, so that each and every one of us when we go to bed tonight and we put our head on our pillow, we can think, I have another tool in my toolbox that's going to help me to live better, feel better, have more energy and vitality, and maybe just transition out of that place of surviving and into a place where we can start to thrive. Because when we thrive, life is so incredibly different. And that's been my passion and my desire, and why I wrote this book. And the book took, over 4 years to actually pull together and write. But I'm so excited with the roadmap that we have around something that, really up until 2016, when the Nobel Prize in Medicine was won for autophagy, up until that point, other than the researchers within the universities that were actually doing that research, the world did not even know what this word autophagy was. And it's a biological process that we all have in our bodies every single day that can transform our health at a cellular level.
So there's so many really big things we need to talk about tonight. We need to talk about autophagy. I mean, there are, I bet if we looked, we could find 1,000 different programs that we can do to look better and feel better. I don't know very many of them that have Nobel Prize winning science behind them. We've got a clinical study to talk about, but here's what's really interesting. Anyone who knows you, Naomi, knows your life, knows what you're about. You're a mother, you're working crazy hours, you're traveling. We're going to talk about sandwiched women, which makes me hungry, by the way. But but what I really want to get to is anyone who knows you would tell you 4 years ago, you have no right, you have no time to write a book. There's a lot of people who want to write books. They go sit on a beach somewhere. They have this time. You really had to this had to be so important for you to add it to the myriad of things you had going on. What was that spark for you that said, look, I've got to get this in the hands of other women? What started that process for you and made it so important that you did what you needed to do to get it done?
As I mentioned, I've always suffered from autoimmune inflammatory disorders in my body. So there are a lot of principles that are in this book, from fasting to eating certain food to sleeping at certain time, to different types of exercise that I would incorporate, even to some of the skincare that I would be using as tools naturally to deal with the inflammation in my body. And it was when I was in Calabria, Italy, I was actually over there specifically because there's this special citrus bergamot fruit that we talk about in the book. That's an incredible polyphenol and flavanol. It does so much, not just to protect our body from the antioxidant, as an antioxidant from the oxidative stress, but it also really helps to activate the autophagy in our cells. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. So here I was in Calabria, Italy, the most beautiful part of the world. And I was literally in the fields with the farmers who have been farming and harvesting this fruit for generations. So I was with this scientist, a group of scientists and the farmers. And the reason I was over there was because citrus bergamot actually helps to improve our cholesterol profiles. So not only does it impact the LDL, but it also helps to increase the HDL. So a lot of people who are on statin feel real discomfort on the statins, in their joints and in their bones. And citrus bergamot has been clinically shown when incorporated with statins or even when used on its own to improve our cholesterol profiles. So I had to go to Calabria. I had to learn about this fruit. And when I was over there, I met one of the main researchers, Dr. Elizabeth Janda. I was on the phone with Elizabeth just last week, and she is a prolific researcher, and she's always looking for the ways that, especially as women, we can improve our health. And she does a lot of research on non-alcoholic fatty liver and what we need to do for non-alcoholic fatty liver. And so the impact of processed food on our liver, on our overall health, is what she was researching at the time. And she said to me as we were in her laboratory, let's talk a little bit more about how fatty liver had such a big impact on our health. And she started to serve me this citrus bergamot tea. And we had one cup and then we had another. And by the end of the afternoon, we had each had 4 cups of the citrus bergamot tea. And I laughed and I'm like, okay, it's super delicious. It's wonderful. I was in love with it. But I wanted to know why she drinks this tea every day throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
And Elizabeth Janda, Dr. Janda said to me, oh, Naomi, it's my secret anti-aging drink. It's what keeps my cells young and brilliant and healthy and vibrant and gives me energy and helps me to burn fat. And she went on and on. And it's all because of this process that the citrus bergamot does within the body. It helps to activate this thing called autophagy. Autophagy meaning self, auto, phagy, to eat. So literally there's like a little Pac-Man that goes deep into the cell and eats up the unnecessary pollution, junk. It helps to recycle the pieces that don't need to be there. And she gave me this whole explanation of this process in my body that I had never heard about. And I was so excited and so passionate about that, that as soon as I flew home to the US, I did what I love to do. I sat down and I found all of the world's top researchers around autophagy. I found the researchers who looked at the skin, who looked at exercise, who looked at sleep, who looked at food, who looked at nutritional supplements, who looked at the whole area. And I had to find different scientists. And I pulled all these scientists together and I asked them, if you were to make me a plan that would activate my own autophagy, what would it look like? And the reason I was so passionate, Kat, and everybody that's joined us, is because I had just hit 40 years old. And I remember waking up one morning and looking in the mirror and feeling like I had just aged 5 years overnight. My energy was low. My skin was not glowing. I felt just like I didn't have any of the vibrance of my youth. And the vibrance that we normally have is deep within our cells. And I could not sort of put it together. And what had happened, Kat, is I was experiencing the impact of accelerated aging. I was literally aging faster than my mother was at the same age. So when my mother was 40, she looked much younger, had way more energy and vitality than I did at 40. And it's because of the life that we live today, right? I'm a sandwiched woman. I'm being pressured by work. I run a company. I have 4 children. I have responsibilities around my parents. And at the end of the day, I just get more and more sandwiched. And it was manifesting itself as accelerated aging. And that's when I knew I needed a tool that I could grab out of my toolbox that could give me a competitive advantage. So I could literally like outsmart this aging process. And that's what autophagy is all about.
So what led you to say, okay, I know you did what you started doing all of this research. What prompted you to say, look, I'm going to put this in a book so I can share this with other women?
What prompted me to put it,
because you just talked about how sandwiched you are, and every one of us watching this can totally relate to that feeling. If you write a book to that, I can't understand it. So it had to be a very specific drive for you.
For all of you that are listening and watching, think about in your life when there's a moment where you feel like you have no choice, right? It may be a moment around your child. Nan, who's helping to moderate this right now, she has a beautiful daughter who's in college. And I asked Nan just now, I said, did you speak to your daughter today? Yeah, of course I did. And I'm sure, Nan, you do that every single day, right? Every single day. And the reason Nan does that is because she has no choice. That is instinctual. She must do that. And when I learned that we have this process in our body, I had no choice but to write the book. I had no choice but to spend literally every single weekend, every moment other than when I was working and eating and spending time with my family, I was working on the book because I had no choice but to share this information because it is so incredibly important. Today, Dr. Joe Mercola reached out to me and called me and said, I just really want to thank you for writing Glow15 because there are so many people that need this kind of communication and we need it for our lives. I mean, if we just look at the statistics in our own wonderful, beautiful country, half of us are either overweight or obese, actually more than half, 60%. And pre-diabetic and diabetics are at 50%. So what we're doing in this country is hurting us so badly. And so I wanted to raise my hand and say, wait, hang on. There are other ways for us to do this. And I'm going to get those answers for us so that we can outsmart the process in our body that is being, that is hurting us, or the foods, the junk foods that we're exposed to. We do not have a competitive advantage on our side. And I just want to be able to bring that to women all over the world.
Okay, Gal, thank you so much. And we're so grateful for you for bringing this to us because it keeps us from having to do it ourselves, right? So we can either live your life and spend years and years and years and try to get access to all of these experts, or we can take the knowledge that you've gone through. And what I love is it's not just like you've collected this knowledge and thrown it at us. You've actually really, really carefully thought through what are the things that work the very best? What are the things that really don't work? What are the most important, secrets to, like you say, tools in a toolbox to help us on a day-to-day basis, because we are so busy to be able to grab those one or two things on a daily basis. And what I love so much about what you do is you talk about, you don't talk about like, I have to change my life tomorrow. It's these small, simple things I can fit in.
I want the competitive advantage to be in everybody's hands. I want my mother, and I give her the tools all the time and let her know, look, all you have to do is tweak this a little bit. You don't have to make a huge change. It's not that stress is bad. It's that chronic stress is bad. In fact, acute stress in short bursts can be really good for us. And I love testing and I mean, I walk the walk. I live this every single day. This morning, I started my day. I meditate first thing in the morning. Why? Because I'm type A. Why? Because our cortisol levels are at the highest. And those 5 to 10 minutes of meditation while I'm still in bed allow me to transform the way my whole day is experienced. Before I got on the phone, before I got on this live Facebook this evening, I did another 10 minutes of meditation. So I'm always thinking of the easy and fast ways to do things. And it could be as simple as drinking cold water first thing in the morning, ice cold water. I've known for years that lukewarm water is very good. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to rev your metabolism and you want to get that going in the morning, it's that ice cold water that makes the difference. And then waiting an hour and a half before you drink your caffeine because your cortisol levels are so much higher when you wake up, and that's given you already a burst. So there are just small changes that we can make, and then validating it all the time with my team of researchers and scientists. I mean, literally, probably today, Kat, I spoke and connected with 8 different researchers in their respective fields. A text here, a quick call here, an email here. Hey, wondering about, the MCTs as M8s versus M12s. Tell me a little bit about it. Or someone asked the question about the gallbladder and intermittent fasting that Walter Longo had made a comment about just a while back. Well, I happened to be with his CEO yesterday, Dr. Joseph Anton, so I was able to talk about that. And we said, well, you know what? We need to really pull these studies before we feel confident in that. So it's an agility of data that I want to be able to provide to women so that we're not just surviving, but we can start to thrive. You know, we need to hack our own biology, but I like to consider it, rather than hacking, as outsmarting, right? How do we outsmart so that we can have that brilliance of energy and well-being that comes from the inside out?
Thank you. So there was a couple of things there that really struck me that were really awesome. First is, there's so many so-called experts out there who write books, who speak, who want their goal is to get a following of people, right? What I love about you is your goal isn't to get a following, but it's like to really serve us and help us and come at us with great information. But unlike most experts, Naomi, what you're doing is you're saying, look, I don't know everything. I am not everything. I don't know everything. Let me go out and find the experts in all of these different areas. And for women like me, that's so meaningful, because I don't want to know what just one person knows or hear what they believe or what they figured out. You have this great, graceful ability to go out and gather this whole world of information. And you're not too proud to say, hey, here's what I learned from this person, and here's what I learned from this person, and seek them out for us and get those, small bites of outsmartedness for us to use in our everyday lives. I like that approach so much.
And unapologetically, right? So I think a lot of times as women, we apologize, and I'm English, so we're like the major apology. Everything is, oh, I'm sorry before anything else. I'm just sorry. I wake up, I'm sorry. But so having to go away from that and instead go into, okay, what is it that this expert who may have spent the past 30 years researching this specific topic, what is it that they can provide to us as women to really improve our health and our well-being? And being able to have a whole group, a large group, literally hundreds of experts that I can tap into, that I have developed relationships with over the past decade. We just did the docu-series, The Real Skinny on Fat, and I got to interview close to 80 world-renowned experts in most cases. And let me tell you, the docu-series will come out again in a couple of months, but we have so many more experts that want to join in it and want to share their information, and they want to share it in this connected manner because it's so confusing. The information that's out there is so damn confusing. So if we're able to connect the dots and say, okay, this expert really understands the nuances of intermittent fasting, and we can bring that forth. Like, I knew 5 years ago that intermittent fasting was the way to go. The reason I knew that is because it was just starting to bubble up in the universities. Now, I've been fasting for 25 years to reduce the inflammation in my body. And I've done juice fasts, water fasts, all different kinds of fasts. I mean, like probably 6 different types of fasts. But 5 years ago, when I would be spending time with my good friends in the aging departments of different universities, I started to get a sense of, wait a minute, there's science now that's beginning to show us that 16 hours is tremendously impactful on helping our body to burn fat, on improving our insulin sensitivity, on allowing us to reduce inflammation. And we'll go into some more of the benefits of intermittent fasting. But that was 5 years ago. So being able to be on that cutting edge and working with those scientists then, I was able to test and really get my body accustomed to this infrequent, day on, day off of intermittent fasting, which is extremely important because it keeps the body guessing at all times. So if the body is guessing, how many calories am I going to get, it actually becomes that much more efficient. So that's why in Glow15, it's about a high day and a low day. A low day is when the intermittent fast takes place.
Yeah, I love that, high and low. And we learned with exercise that what they call muscle confusion, right, was very, very critical to making progress. It seems like metabolism confusion, for lack of a better term. Maybe we'll come up with that. It's probably that guessing game, right?
Yes, right. So our metabolic health, the amount of research that's going into really understanding metabolic syndrome, metabolic health, the impact it has on neurodegenerative diseases, on so much. There's such a body of this research that's coming forth right now. There's a surge of it. But with intermittent fasting, when we really look at it, it's something that I've noticed a ton of men doing, right? So all of the researchers that I'm friends with have been doing it for years, and all of the biohackers and so many men are doing it. They just jump into it. But because women have seen maybe some of the blogs that are out there that say, intermittent fasting can impact our hormones, I find that a lot of women hold back from it. But that's not the reality. I can tell you that with my team of researchers, I've gone through the science. I know that it's great for us. And if we just give ourselves that chance to do it. And what I mean by that is pick the one meal of the day that you're the least committed to. So if that's dinner or breakfast. So lunch, I want you to have lunch sort of stuck in the middle, because we want you to not eat when you're sleeping. That's so much easier. But if let's say it's dinner, then you stop eating after lunch. So you may stop eating by 2 p.m. and then you will not start eating again until 16 hours later, right? So you'll start eating the following morning, and you will have breakfast and lunch, and you'll skip the dinner. So as long as you're not eating for 16 hours, you are giving your body the chance to activate the youth within the cell. And that's where autophagy works. So autophagy loves to be in a state of fasting, because what happens is it can then do its work. So, I've given an example of autophagy as like the Pac-Man in the cell. I also look at it as the doctor in the cell. So when the cell isn't having to worry about the digestive process, it's able to say, the doctor in the cell is able to say, okay, this mitochondria is damaged. I'm going to recycle these parts. Or this part of the protein of the nucleus is no longer needed. Or this entire cell needs to be replaced, or whatever it might be. But then our body is able to really cleanse and detoxify, which makes our body allow itself to be younger, and it works at a cellular level.
So what's interesting is you talk about autophagy. We're getting quite a few comments about, tell us about the book, tell us about your program. Guys, I if it were up to me, I'd keep her on all night. We'd go through the whole book, we'd go through the whole program, but we have an hour. So we're gonna have to be really careful. I know, Naomi, in the book, you talk about 11 principles. And a lot of people on the call, are saying, we love the book. So I know they're reading it, but we have a lot of people who aren't quite into it yet, or they're partway into it. So let's take two of the most commonly asked questions that we're getting. You started talking about intermittent fasting, but this Nobel Prize winning science, guys, this is only the Nobel Prize in medicine. Autophagy, right? That Naomi is talking about, and really taking this science. And what's great is you actually took everything you're talking about tonight in the book and did a clinical study or a clinical trial that I want to talk about that led to a program, which is super exciting for people like me. But let's talk about autophagy specifically and what you refer to as protein cycling. I think we get a lot of questions around those. Let's really go deep in those two areas for the viewers tonight.
Great. Kat, so you're right. There are 11 principles. I didn't want to have too many, and I wasn't about us depriving ourselves of anything. So the principle around intermittent fasting, so it's around autophagy, intermittent fasting, and protein cycling. We call it IFPC. And I like to combine the two, right? So we've spoken a little bit about intermittent fasting. I'm going to talk a little bit more about IF, or intermittent fasting, for all those that are just joining.
So we talk about I read about these long fasts. Sorry to interrupt you, but I want to make sure we're really clear that you have to hit 3 days to get autophagy or 5 days to get autophagy. Can you get autophagy just from intermittent fasting?
Yes, and that's why we have the 16 hours. So look, when we do a 3-day fast, or when we do a 5-day fast, I just did a 5-day water fast, and I will do it again, and I will do it again and again. Once we're at day 3 of a 5-day water fast, we're starting to really stimulate our stem cells. So for my autoimmune health specifically, I want to get to that stimulation of new stem cells, and also for, the anti-aging benefits around stem cell generation. So that's something different. And when you do 16 hours of intermittent fasting, you are activating the autophagy in your body. So 16 hours, what I like to do is I like to call it 8 hours of scheduled eating. So, and it's 8 hours together. So those 8 hours of scheduled eating are so much easier to do when you start with fat first. So whatever the first meal of your day is, make sure that it has fat in it as its primary macronutrient. So that's why I have all the avocado, the AvaGlow recipes. I eat usually 2 to 4 avocados a day. I eat handfuls of nuts, like I've probably eaten 4 handfuls of macadamia nuts today. I've enjoyed amazing olive oils, flaxseed oils. I pour the oil on my avocado. So I eat predominantly fat, and I'm obsessed with the good fats. And I can't wait to help every single other person in this country love and benefit from fats. But what fats also... So
anybody watching this, Naomi, that's seeing your skin right now should immediately start consuming 2 to 4 avocados a day and all of your fat. Anyway, continue.
What's so funny is for those of you that may know Dr. Udo Erasmus, he wrote a book about 30 plus years ago called Fats That Heal and Fats That Kill. And he is my personal hero. So I had the opportunity to interview him for The Real Skinny on Fat. And I swear he hasn't aged a day in like 40 years. And the first time I met him and we shook hands, I touched his hands and I thought I was touching a baby's hands. And I commented, I said, "Your hands are so incredibly soft, Dr. Udo. What is the story?" And he told me all these years ago, and it must have been over 20 years ago when I first met him, he said to me, "Naomi, the outermost layer of our body, right? The outermost layer of our skin, our largest organ, has to be a reflection of our internal organs. So if our skin is moist and soft, that means that our organs, our internal organs, are also moist and soft.
Oh,
but if
interesting.
Our skin is dry, it could mean that our organs are also dry," which was a very different concept than I had ever heard before.
Interesting, but it does have to be those healthy oils. Interesting. I'm watching this chat feed, Naomi, and what's interesting is people are saying, "Oh, 5 days is hard. 16 hours I can do."
Yeah.
What's interesting is because of you, I did a 5-day fast of just water.
Wow.
And I was surprised. It was much easier than I expected. It really was. I felt great.
That's where fat comes in as well. So for the people that have never tried an intermittent fast, I'm going to give you a couple of easy tips that will help you. So you choose the meal that you can go without. So for me, I never liked eating breakfast, so it was very much easier to skip breakfast. So what I did is I stopped eating at 8 p.m. at night. Now, before I started this process, I would love to snack late at night and do different things while I was relaxing. And, eating is an emotional process for so many of us, right? And when we are burning sugar, instead of fat as fuel, when we're burning sugar, it doesn't matter. It could be an hour after we've eaten so much food, we've consumed all of this, but we burn through the fat. An hour later, I guarantee were thinking about food again. And that was always me. So once I could change from being a sugar burner and get my body into being a fat burner, and ultimately now I'm a body fat burner, which changes everything in life. But once I could start being a fat burner, what I would do is I would have my last meal of the day as predominantly fat. And I started to remove the sugar out of my diet. So if I could go away from eating sugar and instead get into eating more satiating fat as my last meal, then I felt better while I was getting up in the morning and not eating breakfast. And then when I started my first meal of the next day at lunchtime, again, I would start with fat first. So fat first and carbs last is our second principle. But just going back to intermittent fasting, the way to make it easy is to, number one, work to remove the sugar from your diet. But don't do it based on willpower. Replace the sugar with fat and make sure that you're replacing it with good fats. So every time you feel that desire for something sweet, it's just your body saying, I need more fuel. So give it fuel, give it good fat rather than sugar. It's going to take some time to adjust. It's a little bit uncomfortable at the beginning, but slowly build into that and just keep reaching for the good fats, the almonds, the olives, the macadamia nuts, the avocado, the fatty meat. I mean, this morning I probably ate 5 pieces of bacon and it was delicious. And I'll eat pork belly in the morning, like embrace the good fats. And you can be vegan, you can be vegetarian, you can be meat eating like I am. I also, a lot of people ask about dairy. It depends on how your body deals with dairy. I do really well with dairy because I'm European, and we should always look to how our mother ate. And that's usually what works best with our unique microbiome. So my grandmother is a French woman who ate a lot of dairy and had a lot of the cheeses. And so for me, it does very well. But you embrace the good fat, and that keeps you so much more satiated. And then you get the benefits of the fast. Now, if you feel like you can't automatically jump into the 16 hours, after you've reduced the sugar, you've replaced it with the good fats, then go for 12 hours. Start with 12 hours. And if you're going to drink your autophagy, add the fat into it. There's a reason I incorporated the fat into the autophagy. It helps your body to become fat adapted, and fat is a much cleaner burn than sugar is. It produces much less damage to the body, right? None of the oxidative stress or the inflammation. That's why it's such a positive thing to incorporate more good fat into our diet. So those are some simple strategies for intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
But I want everyone to
We're
try.
getting a lot of comments about the people that are doing the 16-hour what do you call it? Eating windows?
Yeah, like
scheduled eating.
8 hours of scheduled eating, 16 hours of intermittent fasting. However it works for the individual to help themselves understand that this is something that helps with insulin, like it improves the insulin sensitivity so that our body is actually able to use the fat that is stored in it for fuel. We actually can become burners of fat, which is ultimately where we want to go. And intermittent fasting helps us get there. Intermittent fasting helps with our immune system. If somebody is going through cancer, through radiation and dealing with a disease, fasting can really support the body in that process. The way that it activates the autophagy in the body is so incredibly powerful. And it's just this back and forth. So again, I want everyone to do the high and the low day. So I'm not saying fast every single day. You want to sort of surprise the body where the body's thinking, oh, what's happening today? It's that muscle confusion that you were talking about. But it's like metabolic confusion. And then the body keeps working to adjust to the different behaviors that we're supporting it with. It's like the hunter-gatherers, right? They were either in a state of fasting or feasting. And the Bible references fasting deciding to do fasting over 70 times. I mean, this is something that's happened forever, and it's part of who we are as human beings. We're either eating or we're fasting, and to be able to do it consciously can have a huge, huge impact on our well-being.
So I'm getting a lot of comments on the live feed here, Naomi, that people are saying they actually feel better and function better on their intermittent fasting days. Why is that?
Oh, I love to hear that, right? So that's that little tool in our toolbox. So most of us, what do we don't eat usually for 8 or 10 hours, but when we're intermittent fasting, we're not eating for 16 hours, and we're using our own body to help us. But the reason we feel more energy, the reason we have more mental clarity when we're intermittent fasting, has a lot to do with the blood sugar balance that we're experiencing. We don't experience the up and down mood swings. Like, I always thought I was just a really moody person, but once I started to balance out my blood sugar and was able to move away from sugar because I was so satiated and intermittent fasting, my moods improved, my sense of well-being improved. So everything that we're all sharing with each other, that's the power of fasting. And by the way, intermittent fasting is the number 3 searched term around health on the internet right now. Really? And yet I guarantee you that 90% of the people that are fasting are men. They're not the women. So all of the women that are here, that we're all together, join my Fasting with Naomi community. You know, a lot of you probably come from that community and you're tuning in from there, but we have thousands of people that are interfacing with each other, because if we can get this idea of fasting into our regular lives, intermittent fasting, you know, the cycling of the fasting back and forth every other day, it's a game changer.
That's so great. I know Anne Elizabeth, who's been with us tonight, is asking some really great questions.
Hey, Anne Elizabeth.
She's obviously involved and has been asking some great questions on this. We've got Susan. Thank you, Susan. We've got people from, hang on, I just lost you there. From Canada, I'm trying to find some of the other places here. Start posting and tell us where you're watching from. This is really, really fun to just really connect with you guys. Susan Wolf is who I was thinking of. So talk to us a little bit more about protein cycling. We're getting a lot of questions around what does that mean and how do carbs fit in and what do we do? What is this protein cycling? How do I do it?
So protein cycling is part of the intermittent fasting program. So on a high day, you're going to eat the autophagy activating foods, you're going to exercise, you're going to basically follow some of the principles, fat first and carbs last. But on a low day, you're going to do the intermittent fasting and the protein cycling, and they come together. The reason I'm so passionate about protein cycling, and a lot of you have heard about intermittent fasting, may have been doing it, but you probably have not heard as much about protein cycling because, again, we live in a society where we believe that more protein is best. And so most of us as women consume like sometimes twice as much protein as our bodies actually need. And so in Glow15, I go through exactly how to calculate the right amount of protein that you need. But on a low day, I'm looking for you to consume no more than 25 grams of protein. And 25 grams of protein is like a small 4-ounce piece of chicken or meat. It could be like 6 teaspoons of a nut butter. It's not a lot of protein. You can actually get a lot of that protein right in the vegetables that you're eating. So we break it all down so it's very simple. But 25 grams of protein is significant for a lot of the same reasons that fasting and intermittent fasting is. And it activates autophagy. So when you are not giving your body protein, your body can't make protein on its own. So what it does is it starts trying to find the protein that's already in your body and using that, which is so beneficial for the activation of the youth within our cells. So that's one reason to do a cycle of low protein. also, when you consume a low protein every other day, it actually has been shown in some research to help support the building of muscle. So we want to always be maintaining and building our muscle to have strong bones and all of the benefits that come with the support of good muscle. So we're not saying have low protein every single day, because that's not what the program is about. It's really about interval of low protein, 25 grams, and high protein. But again, when you consume low protein, it also helps to support the insulin sensitivity, which is so incredibly important. And when you have low protein in your body, what happens to your body is it is forced to burn that fat. So it's basically mirroring what the intermittent fasting is doing for your body on that low day. So you're getting more benefit throughout the rest of the day. Now, the next day, you'll consume the regular amount of protein that you normally would. But what's also very interesting, and what many of you may have heard, I'm not sure, is that when we start to consume less carbohydrates, less sugars, but we replace it with protein, our body will literally convert the protein into sugar. So that's an interesting thing about protein as well. And we live in a society where we overconsume our protein.
Yeah, we have protein, like you can, protein bars, protein snacks, protein shakes, protein supplements. You know, you have to have protein with everything. So I think this is really a fun way to think through. You don't have to get extreme about it, but cycle through. And so do you do like an every other day?
Exactly. So on a low day in the book, we do 25 grams of protein and intermittent fasting. So I like to say, for those of you that are starting, or for all of those of you that have been in the We Tribe, which has been so much fun these past 15 days, just ended it yesterday. So hooray. I mean,
yay, good job, you guys.
So excited. And this is just the beginning of a journey. We'll talk a little bit about the clinical study and why 15 days, because that's something that is very, very, very interesting. But in the week, you're going to have 4 high days or 4 low days. It's your choice. So basically what most people do is on Monday, they make it a low day, Tuesday a high day, Wednesday a low day, Thursday a high day, Friday a low day, and then they have the weekend as high days where they, do whatever they want based on the book, but they're not fasting, and they're not doing the lower levels of the protein cycling. So 3 days out of the week.
I said, but it's not, I think too many of us, and maybe it's just me, it's like, oh, it's the weekend, I can do whatever I want. It's a free for all.
Well, the cool thing is, though, when your body gets used to burning body fat instead of sugar for fuel, you start to adjust. All of a sudden, everything that you want is very different, right? Like what I want to do on the weekend is totally different than what I wanted to do before I was fat adapted and my body knew how to utilize autophagy. So it's kind of cool to just be on that journey with our own health and our own well-being.
That is so great. Thank you so much. And thank you, those of you who have joined us. We have Crystal from Grass Valley, California. We've got people from Canada, Wisconsin. Good thing you didn't bash dairy, Naomi. That's cheese country. And Minnesota, Florida, your home.
Yes.
So really, really interesting. So I want to talk a little bit now, before we run out of time, about this clinical study that you did and how it led to this ongoing program that you've created for us.
This is the best part about Glow15. And actually, you're all going to hear how the book got its name. So when I got back from Calabria, Italy, and I reached out to all the researchers and said, how do I make my skin activate autophagy? What kind of exercise do I need to do? And I put the plan together. Of course, I tested it on myself. And everybody in my world, my friends and my family, were wondering, like, I got so many comments, what are you doing? You have so much more energy. You look so much better. You sound so much better. Like, you've dropped weight. My body fat, I lost like 6% body fat. It was unbelievable. I couldn't get over it. And so then I said to my friends and family, okay, this is what I'm doing. And they all tried it. And the results were astonishing. And so at that moment, I thought, okay, I've worked over the past 25 years with millions and millions of people. Millions of people have used my products, have benefited from my products. And I thought, I want to share this with the world. But before I do that, I want to do a clinical study to just figure out, what exactly is happening here. So we went to the researchers at Jacksonville University, and they put together a group of 35 women. And these women were everything from housewives to CEOs, to the deans of the colleges, to administrators, to technicians. I mean, like, all different types of women. And the women who were in the study, every single one of them stayed for the duration of the study. One woman had to drop out because she had surgery and she wanted to get back in. So that was the first thing. Everybody engaged the whole time, and they were intermittent fasting. They were doing the exact program that we have in Glow15. And the study was for 8 weeks. And 2 weeks into the study, I will never forget, I got a call from the head researcher, Dr. Heather Hausenblas, and she said to me, Naomi, I have some news for you. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what? Like, this was too much. I took these women on a journey they didn't want to go on. She said, no. Every single participant in the clinical study has achieved results, from losing weight to improving their blood pressure, to getting off their medications, to improving their skin, the reduction in fine lines and wrinkles. I mean, the list went on and on and on. And
wait, stop.
2 weeks.
Every single person?
Every single person in the clinical study achieved results in 2 weeks.
That's amazing.
So we got really excited and thought, wow, if people would just give themselves 2 weeks to try this, it could be a jump start, and then they could do the larger program. And so that's how the book was named Glow15.
And we all do. We really want to glow. There's something to that. There's something to being told, not just you're beautiful or you're pretty, but there's something to being told you look great, you're glowing. There's a feeling to that that's more encompassing and whole and gratifying. That word glow really is. And it doesn't matter. I think we all have seen very thin women who look very drawn and, tired, and it's just not worth, when you can look healthy and glowing, it just means a lot. So you have this program that you've put together, Naomi, your Glow15 program, for the people who, people like me. I'll read a book, I'll devour it, and then, do a couple of weeks, and then I'm kind of lost. I really need that camaraderie of other women and a guideline to follow and something to, kind of keep me tethered on a day-by-day basis. And I think once we do a month or two, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, we start getting a much different rhythm in our lives that's easier to maintain. And you're right, at that point, people start asking, what are you doing? So from this clinical trial, you created this 8-week program where, if I understand correctly, I would be able to go through the whole thing and have all of the resources that those who did the clinical study did.
That's why we created the program. And it's a 9-week program, and it takes us through day by day, the first 15 days. And then there are weekly sessions where there's different information. You go really deep into the 11 principles, because these 11 principles are what make the book. And we've really touched on one of them this evening, but There are 11, and they're all so incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I can't imagine what having you available for all of these principles to really do a deep dive. And for those of you watching, I spent a little bit of time going through what this program is laid out. And one thing I could not believe is that over the course of the program, you are available to either Naomi for a couple of those weeks or her team and her nutritionist every single week live as a small group to go through the program together. Some of you are asking how to get in on this course. Right now, Naomi, I know you're offering some incredible discount, get acquainted price for this group that's coming on board after the clinical study. I think it's, can we post in the live comments here, the page? We've got a few people asking about it. And here's one thing I want to point out, and I don't want to take your time, because everything you say, every word that comes out of your mouth is just like golden for me. But what's amazing is so many questions are coming in that are specific about dairy, about drinking, about what's best for you. And a lot of people with very specific medical conditions. I had someone post about, gosh, I wish I could find your name, sweetheart, vitiligo. I have one of my dearest friends has vitiligo. We all have our personal situations. And so I would really encourage you guys to take a look at this course while Naomi has it at this incredibly insane price. You basically get to go through it as a group and have access to these live Q&As. Could you imagine being able to like get on the phone with Naomi once a week and just ask her your questions? I mean, that's just amazing. I look at my life of the money I've spent on supplements that didn't work and gym memberships that didn't work and advice that didn't work and programs that didn't work and I didn't work. And I'm just thinking, I'm looking at what you're offering here, Naomi, and I'm astounded. Thank you for giving us access to so much support and help and structure. And like you said, what did you say? Not the secrets, but the tools in the toolbox.
The outsmarts.
The outsmart. The outsmart.
So, that's right. As women, our brains are very complex. They're more complex than the man's brain, and we tend to suffer more. So my whole thing is, how do we outsmart aging? How do we outsmart the accelerated agers? How do we outsmart fatigue? How do we outsmart all of these little things that together can, put us on our back and do it in a way that's not difficult? I don't believe in having to make massive change, and I don't believe in depriving ourselves of anything. I just want to figure out how to do it and do it better. And that's usually with some of the cutting edge science that's oftentimes still in the universities and hasn't made it out to us.
Yeah, we're very fortunate that you're out there for us on our behalf, finding these cutting edge pieces of research for us as women. We need our life simplified. But what's really funny as you were talking about this is I'm picturing, when we see a woman who looks amazing, the first words out of our mouth are, "What are you doing?" Right? That's always what we say.
Always.
We don't say you look great. We say, "What are you doing?" Because we want to do that. And we know if they look a certain way or have energy or act a certain way or are losing weight or feeling better and have more energy, they're doing something specific to make that happen. And there's so many little things here. And that's, once again, the things I really appreciate about you is this isn't like, this is so hard and horrible. You figured out a way to make this work in your life. And I think any of us are able to do it as well. It was Tony that asked about the vitiligo. So many of you are asking really, really great individual questions. And I know Naomi's team is madly typing, answering as many questions as they can. But I just really want to encourage you while Naomi is doing this promotion in alignment in conjunction with her book launch. If there's any way you guys can jump on this Glow15 program, and I know we've posted the link here a couple of times for you, I just, again, I'm your audience, Naomi, and the things that you are doing, not just to help us have a better life, but support us as women, I thank you for that on behalf of all of us.
Oh, I thank you. And it's about that connectivity and about that collaboration. We are, as women, naturally inclined to collaborate. Studies show that we will collaborate over getting more money and in our workplace. And my thought is, look, we should have both. We should be able to collaborate and make more money. And I think we're going to see a lot of that happening more and more in today's climate. But my dream and my hope is to really allow us to get out of that place of just surviving and be able to thrive and grab every day, in the way that we want to and feel wonderful. And I think autophagy can do that. And it's just such a powerful thought to believe and to recognize that we have it inside of our body, and all we have to do is activate it through different principles.
Well, thank you for leading the way. Thank you for bringing us together as a group to be able to follow you and understand you. And guys, for those of you watching this, from my heart, I want you to know Naomi is not worried about how many programs she sells. She's worried about helping each one of us and really focused on getting us through this change that can bring about real positive glow in our lives. And so it's really fun to spend time with you, Naomi, and I am having a blast watching the women on here.
This is so fun. Well, thank you all so much. Keep glowing. So thrilled to have gone through the past 15 days with many of you in the We Tribe. And of course, we have the fasting with Naomi, and I look forward to connecting with each and every one of you.
Okay, thanks so much. Good night, Naomi. Good night, everybody.
Everyone.